I'm here to talk to you about the rise of Gen Z. And so when I say we're running out of time to take the friction out, you say to me, well, Julia, what's the big deal? In the last 15 years, fintech has certainly not taken any market share from banks. And if the worst that can happen is that Uber is the new taxi cab and Netflix is the new Blockbuster, who really cares? Why we care, folks, is that over the next 10 years, the largest turnover of generations will occur in our lifetime, whether you are 30 or 50. The silent generation is dying. Boomers are exiting the workforce. Millennials are turning middle-aged. That's right, the forever infantilized, much obsessed over millennial is turning 40, not 20. And we will witness the rise of Gen Z, 2.47 billion people on the planet who have a primary haptic memory of technology. I believe that having two generations with no haptic memory of technology being replaced by two generations who do, millennials of the smartphone and Gen Z of the laptop, has the potential to create tectonic shifts in the marketplace that most of us are completely unaware of and unprepared for, because it takes 30 years for generations to turn over, and we have become sanguine to the threat of disruption. So I have written a theory. It's called Gen Z disruption. I blog about it on LinkedIn all the time, and it goes like this. Generation Z, growing up playing Angry Birds on their mama's smartphone when they were 3 years old, was so pleasurable and awesome and seamless and intuitive. They are poised to be the most demanding consumers the world has ever known. And in fact, they won't just expect digital experiences to be completely awesome. They will expect all experiences to be awesome. So let's take a minute and talk about haptic memory. Haptics are the form of touch stimuli that are developed when we're small. We get them when we're babies, and we have them until we die. They're very powerful. So let's take a little trip down haptic memory lane. When I show you this screen, depending on your age, it is nothing more than a black screen with white numbers on it. No big deal. But for those of you that are of a different age, it is something else entirely different. It is Pong. And the minute you saw it, you maybe were transported back to your childhood bedroom. Maybe you were lucky enough to have a TV in your bedroom back then, but if not, you played it in your family room. Maybe when you saw this photograph, you were reminded of what your mom used to make for dinner on Tuesday nights. Perhaps you're a little bit younger than that, and this is more resonant instead. Pac-Man. For those of you that remember the way that it sounds, you absolutely know and remember what it was like to hold the hard black plastic controller in your hand. And I could bust you right now by having you remember that you used to think if you shoved the controller harder to the left or right, you would remember exactly that you couldn't, right? But you thought that you could. This is haptics. So remember, Generation X, my generation, doesn't even have a primary haptic memory of technology. But Generation Z does. They have grown up with Angry Birds, and those of you that have kept up on your pop culture, which I know is everyone in this room, you know that this cohort has since moved on to Fortnite, the global gaming phenomenon played by 250 million people, 6 times the population of Canada. 211 million Americans play video games. And those of you that are also keeping up on eSports know that eSports is going to become an Olympic sport soon. I suggest to you that what is happening with eSports and gaming is something that every financial services and healthcare services executive should be paying attention to for one single reason. It is changing the consumer expectations and preferences of an entire generation, of 1/3 of the global population. If I had told you even 5 years ago that there would be a live concert in a video game, you would have thought I was off my rocker. And then if I said that 10 million people were going to attend it live, you would have thought I was even more cracked. This past weekend, Epic Games sucked its entire game into a black hole and kept everybody wondering and on edge about what was happening. We are seeing the shaping of consumer preferences at a scale none of us are prepared for, and I believe not paying attention to this means that you are risking your own irrelevance with absolute certainty. So what do I hope you've taken from our brief time together? Besides the fact that I think you should all become obsessed with eSports, there are two things. Number one, don't be afraid to talk about friction. It is everywhere, and I find it is it's like having a teenager. Everybody thinks that their teenager, that they're the only one with a surly teenager, and yet let me tell you, everybody with a teenager has a surly one, right? This is what friction is in our business. Nobody wants to talk about it. If you are a consultant in this room, don't be afraid to talk to your clients about it. If we don't address this and get seamless omni-channel experiences right, even just as a baseline, we are dead on arrival. So don't be afraid to fight the friction. Number two, you're already winning by being in this room. My next point is to always embrace innovation and change as if your life and career depends on it. The Stagecoach became a car, which will one day be driverless. The space shuttle started out as an airplane and will one day be space travel. And the gramophone became a record player and then a DVD, and now it's streaming music. And 10 years from now, it is entirely likely to be something altogether different. My point is simply that the human race doesn't stand still. It's not how we roll. Embracing change keeps you young. Resisting change makes you brittle. I hope every single one of you walks out of this room today younger than when you walked in. And thanks for being patient with me.